Hey, Ori. How are you? Wow. What did I do now? You only say it like that when I've done something. It was itch. Where is everybody? Hey, Vincy Lou Who, how are you? Hey, Princess, how are you? Ugh! I'm so sick of coughing. Sick of it. Oh, we need music, don't we? Oops, the daisy. I forgot about music. Do-da, do-da. Where's everybody at? Even when I know I never could, know that I can't find nobody else. All right, it's 8:10. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I don't know where everybody's at, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. There it is. All righty. So this is Preacher's Redemption. It looks like it's a motorcycle book by L.A. Remenicky. Hope I said that right. My
My bad if I did not say that correctly. I apologize. I'm only going to read 3 chapters at the most tonight because there's only 9 chapters in this book. So I don't want to give away too much. And the chapters seem a little short, I think. But we'll see what happens here. I can turn this down just a smidgen. Okay. Chapter 1. Crystal Jennings stared at the 2 pink lines. Uh-oh. How could she have let this happen? 2 weeks ago, she would have been ecstatic to see those pink lines, but now, not so much. The positive pregnancy test was just another nail in the coffin of her relationship with her boss. First, she discovered large amounts of money were being run through the business, making her suspect her boss was involved in money laundering. Then, a week later, she found out he was married when his wife had shown up at the restaurant where she was having lunch with him, screaming about the bitch who's screwing my husband. Her relationship with Richard Wilson was over, even if he didn't know it yet. The phone on the table buzzed with a text message, startling her out of her funk. Glad it was a text instead of a call, she punched in her code and read it. Richard, we need to talk. We need to talk. I had to do a goofy voice for him. I mean, come on. He's the bad guy here. She replied, nothing to talk about. It's over, and I'm leaving. Deposit my last check. Blocking the number so she wouldn't see any more text from him, she stood and picked up the packed bag at her feet. All she could think about was getting out of Chicago. Whoa, where's Miss Shirley at when we need her? And back to Forest Springs. She'd decide what to do about the pregnancy later when she'd had a chance to think. The bag held a couple of changes of clothes and a jump drive with incriminating evidence of the money laundering. Just a little insurance he'd leave her alone. The sun peeked over the horizon as she drove out of town away from the wreckage of her life, back to a place she felt safe. Home. It was almost noon when she pulled into the parking lot of the Forest Springs Cafe. A flat tire an hour out of Chicago and a stop for breakfast had her arriving later than she'd planned. The diner still looked the same with the red and white striped awning running across the front. She watched as her oldest friend, Mary Baker, wiped down a table and arranged the salt and pepper shakers and condiment bottles back into their respective spots. The town looked the same as it had for years. Famous for its hot springs, Forest Springs catered to the tourist while retaining its small town charm. Sorry, y'all. After checking the jump drive was in her purse, she stepped out of her car and into the sunshine of an Indiana summer day. Heat radiated up from the asphalt, bringing back memories of running barefoot through the lot as Mr. Carson yelled at them to stop acting like heathens. This is Indiana. I got to talk right. Stop acting like heathens and to get back in the cafe to finish their jobs. Mary was responsible for menus, making sure they were all wiped down and clean before being handed out to customers. And Crystal rode silverware into napkins, preparing for the next rush. Lord, I bet I have rolled tens of thousands of napkins and silverwares. As they grew older, the responsibilities increased, both eventually becoming waitresses. Pulling open the door, she stopped and sniffed. The smell of coffee greeted her, making her want a big mug of it. She stood just inside the door until her friend looked up. Chrissy, you made it! Mary said as she hurried over to pull her into a hug. I'm so glad you're here. I was surprised when you called me from the state line an hour ago. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision. We can talk about that later. Mary pulled her over to the booth near the kitchen. Right now, I really want one of Mr. Carson's special grilled cheese sandwiches. No problem, though I'll be the one making it. Mr. Carson is on vacation until Monday, and Preacher hasn't shown up for his shift yet. She's, and Preacher hasn't shown up for his shift yet. She scoffed. Some manager. I hope you're planning on staying a while. Mr. Carson will be disappointed if he didn't get to see you. I'll be here for a bit. I'm on vacation. She wondered who this preacher person was. Must be someone new in town. Great! I've got some time off coming to me. I'll see about using some of it so we can hang out while you're here. She pushed herself up from the booth. Let me go get that sandwich made for you. Go ahead and help yourself to whatever you want. It's all still in the same place. After Mary went to the kitchen, Crystal walked to the soda dispenser, pleased to discover they still had her favorite Dr. Pepper. Filling a glass with the beverage, she looked up as the bell over the door tinkled, signaling the arrival of customers. Go ahead and sit wherever you like. Picking up some menus, she passed them around the table. I'll get you some water while you're deciding. Returning to the area behind the counter, she yelled through the window to Mary that they had customers. The tinkling of the bell over the door signaled someone else entering the diner. Mary yelled back, Okay, good thing Preacher finally decided to show up. I'll be out in a moment to take their order. Too busy filling glasses with ice and water to look up to satisfy her curiosity about Preacher, she concentrated on setting the glasses on a tray to carry them out to the table. She'd just picked up the full tray and turned when she heard a voice she never thought she'd hear again. Hello, Chrissy. I know you guys like that one. Surprised at the voice. Chapter 2. Surprised at the voice. She lost her grip on the tray, sending the glasses crashing to the floor. Turning to face the owner of the voice, she slipped in the water and landed on her hands and knees behind the counter. She looked to her left and found a pair of black, low-heeled boots next to her, the square toes scuffed from wear. Crystal stood and looked up into chocolate brown eyes filled with concern. She could see the boy she remembered in the man who stood in front of her. His leather jacket creaked as he hooked them to the neck of his shirt. The sleeve of his jacket pulling up his arm and showing the hint of a tattoo. Sorry, y'all. I'm going back to the doctor tomorrow. She lived through her teen years with a huge crush on Mary's brother Ezekiel. Her heart remembered and thumped harder, reminding her of the ways she tried to catch his eye. Back then, he'd been cute and a bad boy, always in trouble. He'd been rebelling against the restrictions set out by their brimstone and fire preacher father, taken off as soon as he turned 18. She'd been 14 and had been heartbroken when he left. I don't remember you being such a klutz. Are you okay? Yeah. He stepped in front of her and held out his hand. Let me help you up. Thanks. I've had a really long day. She placed her hand in his, surprised at the feel of his calloused fingers against her skin. Confused by her reaction, she pulled her hand away. She was pregnant with another man's baby. She shouldn't be feeling things for this leather-clad version of her old crush. I'm surprised you remember me. Ignoring her comment, he helped her to her feet. Let's get you in the office and get those hands and knees cleaned up. You've got blood running down your legs. He stepped over the mess on the floor. Hey, Mary, grab the mop and get this cleaned up. Horrified to discover he was right, she followed him down the hallway past the restrooms to the office. The office was just as she remembered, a small metal desk and a couple of chairs squeezed into a room full of boxes of supplies. It even smelled the same, like old grease and musty paper. After removing his jacket and laying it on the desk, he pulled the first aid kit off the shelf beside the door. Sit. He dug through the supplies in the box. Where are the tweezers? What? Tweezers. I'm trying to find them in this mess. What do you need tweezers for? You've got glass embedded in your knees. Tweezers will be the best way to get it out. She sat on the chair in front of the desk and examined the blood oozing around shards of glass in her skin. How does she not feel that? Squatting in front of her, he picked up the tweezers and bent to work pulling the shards of glass out of her knees. Wincing at the sting, she studied her hands, warm and calloused. Studied his hands. Warm and calloused, they were gentle as he dabbed at the cuts with a square of cotton. She watched him as he absently pushed his hair off his forehead and out of his eyes. Her fingers itched to touch his beard. Trimmed close to his face, it looked both soft and scratchy at the same time. Lost in her perusal of his face, she didn't notice when he poured antiseptic onto a cloth. Ow, that stings! She shivered when he blew on her skin to take away the pain from the antiseptic. After applying bandages to both of her knees, he stood. Keep an eye on those and make sure they don't get infected. Thank you, Zeke. She blushed when she realized she'd been staring. Sorry, it's been a really long day. I'm not that angry kid any longer. Call me preacher. Crystal raised her eyebrows. After everything you went through with your dad, your preferred name is preacher? There's got to be a story behind that. It's a long story, and it's none of your business. Oh, sorry. Tired from her long drive, his dismissal hurt more than it normally would. After a knock, the office door opened. Preacher, get a move on. Preacher, get a move on. I've got hungry customers out here, and I could use some help. Be right there. Standing at the door, he turned and looked back at Crystal. I can see interest in your eyes. Leave it and me be. I'm not worth it. Her eyes wide with surprise, she stifled a yawn as she ambled back out to her table, grateful to see the glass of soda she'd poured earlier waiting for her. She closed her eyes and listened to the rumble of voice as a backdrop for the symphony of sounds coming from the kitchen. The hiss of food hitting a hot grill, the tap of a whisk against the metal bowl, and the squeak of the order wheel as it turned. Mary hurried over, a plate in her hand. Are you okay? She asked as she set the plate in front of her friend. Yeah, just a few cuts. I'm fine. The aroma of melted cheese and toasted bread wafted up from the plate, causing her stomach to let out a loud rumble. Geez, guess I'm hungry. You eat and go get some sleep. Pressing a key into Crystal's hand, she sat down next to her. No sense in you paying for a hotel when I have plenty of room at the house. You can use the guest bedroom if you want it. Now eat and we'll talk after I get done with my shift and you've had a nap. Crystal sat in her car and stared at the house, almost expecting Pastor Baker to stride out the front door and glare at her for being a bad influence on his daughter. He was the only one who thought a little lipstick and mascara were a direct ticket to hell and damnation. The red front door beckoned, making her wonder what had been changed on the inside of the home. Bright and cheery, the door gave the house a welcoming feel it had been lacking. With the key in one hand and her suitcase in the other, she climbed the steps and approached the front door. The screen door screeched, reminding her that some things never changed. Unlocking the door, she walked over the threshold and into a transformed space. What had previously been dark and dour, matching the personality of its owner, was now shockingly different. Light gray paint and white woodwork highlighted the architectural details of the old house. High ceilings paired with long windows letting in plenty of sunlight brightened the space. The heavy curtains were gone, as was the old-fashioned furniture, replaced by modern pieces, the space now feeling much bigger and brighter. Instinctively avoiding the squeaky spots, she climbed the stairs and made her way to the guest room. Too tired to unpack or shower, she pulled off her clothes, crawling into the bed in her bra and panties. It felt so decadent to go to sleep almost naked in a house where a long granny-style nightgown had been the only approved sleepwear. She woke to the slam of a door. The light through the window had dimmed, indicating it was approaching dusk. Refreshed from her long nap, she grabbed her robe out of her suitcase and donned it as she pulled out her bag of toiletries. A shower first, then she'd go check in with Mary. Stepping out of the bathroom, she was almost knocked over by a small bundle of energy with pigtails. Lala, you come back here. I told you I have company sleeping upstairs. Dropping down to one knee, wincing slightly at the pain in her cuts, Crystal held out her hand to the girl. Hi, Lila, is it? I'm Crystal. Adjusting her robe, she stood at the creak of the top of the step. Lila, did you wake up, Crystal? I was already awake. Is that coffee I smell? Yeah, it's only decaf, but it's hot. Want a cup? Yeah, let me go change real quick and I'll be down. No need. It's just us girls for a while yet. Come on down and take your shower later. I have so much to tell you. I guess so. I didn't realize you take care of a little girl. Is she the daughter of a friend of yours? Well, yeah, there's a lot to tell you. Running her hands through her hair, she followed her friend down the stairs and into the kitchen. She was shocked at the bright kitchen with its new appliances and cupboards. Wow, you told me about the changes, but I didn't realize how much it would change the whole feel of the house. It looks amazing. I wanted to change enough that the memories wouldn't haunt me. Crystal sipped her coffee, happy her friend had been able to move past her upbringing to get to this happy place in her life. Good job with the red front door. That probably had him spinning in his grave. Yeah, I painted that myself. It was the first thing I changed. I should have sent you some pictures. With all the changes in my job at the diner, I didn't realize how much time had gone by. Staring out the window, Crystal realized she'd been at fault just as much as her friend. Well, I didn't do any better. I was so wrapped up in my life that I didn't realize we were drifting apart. I promise that will not happen again. So, what happened with you? I can tell something is bothering you. Is your mother worse? And we talk about that later. It's not mom. It's just, I'm just not ready to talk about it yet. Hey, Miss Billy, how are you? I was beginning to wonder about you. Okay, I'll be here when you need me. Now, I'm sure you have all kinds of questions about Lila. The truth is, the front door slammed shut, interrupting her confession. Lila jumped out of her chair and ran out of the kitchen. Daddy's home! Daddy? Oh, crap. Here she sat in a short robe and her underwear. No way was she prepared to meet anyone. She was shocked when she heard the distinctive timbre of Zeke's voice. How's my princess? Did you have a good day at preschool? What did you learn today? Lila chattered about her day, her voice getting louder as she ambled into the kitchen. Pulling at the hem of her robe, Crystal wondered if she could duck out of the room without attracting any attention to herself. Positioning herself beside the entrance to the kitchen, she hoped to slip out before Preacher noticed her. Hey, Chrissy, you staying for dinner? Good thing I bought an extra steak. Frozen in place, she watched his expression change when he realized she was wearing a short robe and not much else. His eyes narrowed and he turned away from her. Dinner won't be for about 45 minutes. Plenty of time for you to get dressed. Well, plenty of time for you to get dressed. Well, that was surprising. She'd have thought he wouldn't be quite so straight-laced the way he had rebelled against his father's strict rules. With his leather jacket and tattoos, she was surprised he was so worried about decorum. Maybe he'd changed more than she had thought. Chapter 3. The next day, Crystal sat on the porch swing, watching the tourists pour into the small town. It always amazed her how many people were interested in the hot springs. Sometimes she wished they would all just go away and leave their little town alone, even as she knew so many people counted on the tourist money to make it through the winter. Thoughts of her life in Chicago crept into her consciousness. The fact that her ex-boyfriend was laundering money through the shipping business scared her the most. Who was he doing it for, and was she in danger? Absently rubbing her stomach, she was terrified of what this meant for her life and that of her unborn child. At least that was one decision she didn't have to make. No way could she terminate her pregnancy. She'd do whatever it took to protect the precious life growing inside of her. She'd always wanted a family. It was happening a little differently than she'd planned, but she would just have to go with it. And she was going to do it by herself. No way could she let Richard get his hands on this child. Her mom was in one of the best nursing homes for Alzheimer's care in the state. So that was one thing she didn't have to worry about. Her life, now that was another matter. No job and an apartment she wouldn't be able to afford for much longer. Exhausted from the emotional upheaval of the last few days, she stretched out on the porch swing as her eyes drifted closed. The blaring honks of a car alarm woke her from her nap. The remnants of her dream floating away like a fluffy white cloud across the clear blue sky. She wiped at the tears on her cheeks, her stomach rolling with nausea. One image from her dream played on repeat across her mind. Richard ripping the baby from her arms and walking away, laughing manically as she screamed at him to return her baby. "Chrissy, are you okay?" Looking up into the brown eyes of Zeke, nausea welled up. Jumping up, she ran into the house and up the stairs, praying she made it to the bathroom before she puked all over herself. After everything in her stomach was in the toilet, she pulled the handle and flushed. She stood and peered at her face in the mirror, the pallor of her skin highlighting the dark circles under her eyes. The creak of a floorboard took her attention from her face. Checking the reflection of the room in the mirror, she was horrified to see Zeke standing in the doorway. "Geez, Zeke, preacher, can a girl get a little privacy?" She really needed to start thinking of him as preacher instead of Zeke. This quiet man was not the Zeke she remembered. Back then, he'd been a troublemaker, somehow more real than anyone else to the girls she'd been. "Just making sure you're okay. Do you need anything? Maybe some 7-Up to settle your stomach?" "I'm fine." She looked down at her hand, hoping he'd take the hint and leave her alone. Swishing some water in her mouth to get rid of the taste of vomit, she spat and looked up, grateful to see an empty doorway. Returning to her seat on the porch swing, she discovered a glass of clear soda and a package of crackers sitting on the table. She was glad to discover he was right. The crackers definitely helped. Sipping the soda, she watched the traffic, wondering what had happened to Zeke to change him. Mary hurried up the walk, a styrofoam container in one hand and a paper bag in the other. "Hey, girlfriend, I heard you weren't feeling well, so I brought you some chicken soup." "Someone has a big mouth." "He was just concerned about you." "Well, I'm not sick exactly." "What do you mean by that?" "I mean, I'm pregnant, not sick." "Oh, wow, congratulations." She set the food down on the table to pull her friend into a hug. "This is a good thing, right?" "Yes, though I will be doing this on my own. It's part of the reason I'm here." "Let's go in and get this soup warmed up for you, and you can tell me everything." She had known she would have to tell her friend the truth eventually, but this was sooner than she'd hoped. Once they were seated at the table, bowls of soup in front of them, Mary picked up her spoon and waved it in the air. So, start at the beginning and tell me what's going on. Obviously, you're here for more than just a vacation. Crystal explained about Richard and how she found out he was married, not mentioning. Excuse me, where did that come from? Not mentioning the money laundering or the evidence in her purse. Better save that for a later time. Maybe he wouldn't figure out she knew. I decided today that I'm keeping the baby and raising it myself. I don't even want to tell Richard about it. I don't want anything to do with him. You can stay here as long as you need. You can even work at the diner. I'm sure Mr. Carson will let you have as many hours as you want. What about Preacher? I don't think he wants me around. Maybe I can find an apartment. I could drive up to Chicago a couple of times a week to visit Mom. Her mind whirled with the possibilities moving to Forest Springs just might work. Moving to Forest Springs just might work. Excuse me, y'all. My brother will just have to deal. I'm inviting you to stay, and he can't say anything about it. She hoped she could work at the diner without letting Preacher see just how much she was still attracted to him. The years hadn't dulled her desire. His quiet, almost surly attitude drew her to him, and she wanted to find out what happened to change him so completely. As the weeks passed, she started to relax. Maybe Richard would leave her alone. She could hope. She worked the dinner rush at the diner as she was plagued by morning sickness from early morning to afternoon. As soon as it hit 3 o'clock, it was as if someone hit a switch and she was fine. Mr. Carson manned the grill for the dinner shift as Preacher liked to be home in the evenings to spend time with Princess. Whenever their paths crossed, she saw him narrowing his eyes if he didn't approve of her. Was it because she was pregnant, not married? She thought he'd be more tolerant after his time away from the influence of his pastor father. Crystal was looking forward to her day off. It was the 4th of July, and she was excited to watch the parade and then the fireworks. She'd been about to walk out the door when Mary had called asking if she could work the lunch shift. The waitress scheduled had called in sick, and Mary was taking her niece to the parade. No way was she going to let that little girl be disappointed, so she agreed to come in and work. The morning sickness seemed to be lessening every day and was almost non-existent. She wasn't looking forward to working with Preacher, but she'd just have to deal with it. With most of the town attending the parade, it would be an easy shift. She sat at a table topping off salt shakers with her back to the kitchen so she wouldn't watch Preacher as he cleaned the grill. The bell over the door tinkled, heralding the entry of a customer. Just sit anywhere, she called out as she stood in turn. Crystal gasped, her nausea returning as the shock twisted her stomach. She steadied herself with a deep breath and approached him. Hello, Richard. She plopped a menu down on the table in front of him. What are you doing here? Focused on keeping her breathing even and her hands steady, she didn't notice Preacher watching the exchange from the kitchen. I was hoping to convince you to come back to Chicago. I miss you. She rolled her eyes, crossing her arms over her chest. What, your wife not doing it for you? Obviously, you're not over your little temper tantrum. I don't love my wife. His fingers crawled along her hip. I love you. Crystal slapped his hand away. Tell it to someone who cares. Now get out. But baby, I'm lost without you. The swinging door to the kitchen swished as Preacher strode out to the dining area. Are you deaf? The lady said to get out. Who is this Neanderthal? Do you know who you're talking to? Yeah, a guy who's going to get his head knocked off if he doesn't leave now. Moving closer to Richard, Preacher clenched his fist. Fine, but I will be back when your watchdog isn't around, and we will talk. With one last look toward the menacing cook, he turned and hurried out the door like a cockroach in the light. When he was gone, she dropped down into a chair, her hands shaking. Here. A glass of water appeared in front of her. Drink this. Thanks. Who was that douchebag? That ass is my ex and the sperm donor. I appreciate your help, but I'm fine now. Why are you so scared of him? I'm not scared of him exactly. She sipped at the water, debating on how much to tell him. It's more about what he doesn't know I have. Is this about you being pregnant with his kid? No, that's not it, though he doesn't know about the baby. She reached into the pocket of her apron and pulled out the memory stick. Paranoid about someone finding it, she always kept it on her person. It's about this. Yeah, he's an ass, and I was his side piece. Granted, I didn't know he was married, but still. Holding the device out to him, she explained, I'm scared he will find out I have this. I was the accountant for his shipping company, and I found some inconsistencies in the books. After some digging, I found his second set of books showing what looks like money laundering. We need to take this to the police. Fudge and Abbott, Chrissy, do you have a death wish? He grabbed the device from her hand. Do you realize what kind of danger you're in? You don't want to mess with the kind of people that launder money. They're usually connected. Connected? What do you mean by that? Have you been living under a rock? Connected as in connected to the mob? Oh, shit. Yeah. You better pray he never figures out you know, or you'll be dead. She stood, her first thought to flee, get away from anyone she cared about. I've got to go. I have to call the nursing home and tell them, shit, where should I go? You're not going anywhere. I'm not going to lose someone else to them. He strode over to the door and locked it before flipping the open sign to closed. What are you doing? We can't close now. The parade's almost over, and we'll be getting customers wanting dinner before the fireworks. Your life is more important than any customers. Mr. Carson would agree with me. Now, we're going back to the office, and I'll make some calls. Calls to whom? You don't need to know. You've already got too much to worry about. Why are you doing this? I know you don't approve of me, so why not just let me go and I'll leave so no one else here will be affected? Why do you think I don't approve of you? I see the way your eyes narrow when you look at me, as if you don't want to see me, Pulling her into the office, he pushed her into one of the chairs. You are just clueless, he mumbled to himself. Yes, I've been trying to avoid you, but not because I don't approve of you. I hated myself when I was 18 because I was attracted to you, a 14-year-old kid. I believed my father when he told me I'd burn in hell for lusting after you. That's why I left town the minute I turned 18. Crystal fought for her breath, struggling to form words. What? What? You left because of me? Oh my God. I had no idea. She stared at him, unable to break her gaze. He managed to pull his eyes from hers and slid his phone out of his pocket and scrolled through his contacts. Don't get any ideas about there being an us now. I'm not that kid anymore. After completing several calls, he slid his phone back into his pocket. A couple of my buddies will be here tomorrow. Don't worry, Chrissy. We'll protect you. She didn't want a bunch of people watching her every move. Running away to join the circus was starting to look like a viable option. Alrighty. We're going to leave it hanging there, boys and girls, or all girls, or whatever. Because, like I said, it's only got 9 chapters. I don't want to give anything away. It's moving kind of fast, so we don't want to give anything away. You can get it at Amazon and probably all the other platforms for $1.99. I noticed it wasn't on Kindle Unlimited. So go get it and read it. And I could probably have it done by the time I went to bed tonight, and I'm a slow reader. So, all right, girls. So be back here tomorrow night for the surprise that I don't even know what I'm reading tomorrow night. Wait a minute. It's tomorrow night, Pebbles. Who is tomorrow night? I don't even know. I could look instead of relying on my PAs all the time, huh? Tomorrow is Winter Adams. Did we ever figure that one out? Hey, Ms. Remenicky. I know I was just messed you up. Great. I don't know if you're just now joining in. I just wrapped up. So if you did, I only read through chapter 3 because you only have 9 chapters and it's moving kind of fast. I didn't want to give away anything more than what was there. So they can start back up at chapter 4 when they get the book. But yeah, you can. Excuse me. At least I'm not coughing again. Well, there might not be surprises